Are you financially ready for retirement? 3/4 of people in one survey underestimated the amount of money they would need to save. Tonight on The Best Times, we talk with 4 financial planners to find out the key to surviving retirement. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. The longevity revolution has changed the landscape of aging in America, and nowhere is the impact greater than in retirement planning, where actuarial tables tell the story. Men reaching age 65 this year can expect to live to an average age of 86.6, and women can expect to reach 88.8. All of which means our money that we've saved has to last longer and go farther. Retirement planners produce financial plans designed to manage risk as we enter our golden years. Tonight on The Best Times, we talk with 4 experienced financial planners to find out the key to surviving retirement. Among the 4 of you, there's over 100 years, I think, of experience in financial planning and in retirement planning between the 4 of you. So I want to draw on that experience. And in your time in this business, what are the big changes you've seen? What are the changes in the retirement landscape, the changes in the attitude of retirees toward retirement? What have you seen?
The biggest change is the fact that we have fewer pensions to fall back on. The major companies in this area and all across the country have terminated their pension plans, so we see fewer people coming to us with a pension as a retirement resource. This generation, compared to a generation ago, many of those people had the pension and the Social Security, and they were pretty much set. Now it's a bigger challenge financially to put it all together.
And I'm sure you're all seeing the same thing, the fact that pensions have gone away. Mm-hmm. And you probably don't have too many clients that have pensions, do you?
They're rare, and this has pushed the risk and the responsibility to the individual that used to be handled at the level of the pension fund. And so you couple that with longevity risk now, with people living so much longer than they used to and certainly have been planning for, you've got a lot of challenges.
We said earlier, you mentioned the longevity revolution, and we were talking earlier about that limit that you're planning to. What age are you planning to now?
95.
95? Mm-hmm. Early 90s?
Yes, mid-90s, longer than the average life expectancy for sure.
And I would imagine, my guess would be, that limit has increased in the 20 to 30 years that you've been in this business.
Our firm has 3 clients over 100 presently. Mm-hmm. We have 12 in their 90s presently. Mm-hmm. And these are not clients who just hired us last year. They've just been with us for decades and decades, and they're still here.
And when you're doing retirement planning, the risk is outliving your money. So
absolutely,
that's the whole reason one does this.
Is that the number one concern that your clients have?
I would agree. I think that's number one, absolutely. That's the biggest concern most people have, is outliving their money these days.
And how do you answer that question when they say, well, how do you not outlive your money? What's your answer?
We have to manage the risk, and most people think their risk in retirement is, what the stocks do next week, next quarter, next year, and that's not the risk at all. The risk is outliving your money. And so there's a learning curve in helping people understand that retirement doesn't mean eliminating risk. It just means managing that risk for longer.
Let's talk about some other concerns, because there were some numbers that I got from the Employee Benefit Research Institute from 2017. They took a survey on retirement confidence. And surprisingly, or maybe it's not surprising, I don't know, Americans feel less confident about having enough money to live comfortably through retirement than they did a year ago. Only 60% of workers said they feel very or somewhat confident about their financial outlook for retirement. Only 60%. That means 40% of us are very worried. Why is confidence so low? And is this a retirement crisis? Are we in a crisis mode here?
I think the demographic, the baby boomers, this massive group moving through the system, we've never seen anything like it before, amid an industry that has become much more complex than it was when our parents retired. 401ks weren't out there, so they don't understand the investment world. And the fear, we see a lot of the fear is the unknown. And despite all of these boomers moving through the system, they're not reaching out for help like they need to reach out for help. They're not sitting down and facing the numbers and saying, okay, what do I want? It's just a big dark cloud, but until they sit down and start putting pencil to paper, they'll continue to fear the unknown.
Well, let's talk about boomers, since you brought up boomers, because there was a survey by Go Banking Rates, and they found that only 1 in 4 people aged 55 and over had $300,000 in savings. And even worse, 3 out of 10 respondents aged 55 and over had no retirement savings. So are boomers ready for retirement?
Depends on how you define retirement. I mean, it's just a matter of the numbers. I mean, we need to get away from this. Somehow retirement is our God-given right if we reach a certain number of birthdays. It's not. It's the result of very deliberate, step-by-step processes, which a planner can help you do, at some point achieving those goals. I mean, 65 was great when everybody was gone at 70, but 65 is not such a good number if your probability of living to 95 is that high.
Why are we not saving more? The numbers I've seen indicate that we're just not, and I realize the absence of pension plans probably plays a big role in it, but why are we not saving more if in fact we probably know we should be?
If you start early saving, which we all know,
which we all don't do,
you have many more years of compounding, but it's very difficult when you're a young person to foresee being 65 or 70. If you wait until you're 40 to start, you may need to save 20-25% of your income, whereas starting earlier in life, you could start with 10% and have much more flexibility as you go through life with that savings.
Well, go ahead.
I think Madison Avenue is very successful at separating us from our money. And they have a lot bigger budget than we as financial planners have to persuade people that your ultimate independence, I don't even like the word retirement, just to say, I want you to be independent so you can do what you want to, not because you have to. That's a motivator for people, but our voice is very small compared to the budget of Madison Avenue. And all those siren songs of temptations they are tempting, I understand.
Well, when we're talking about saving, I mean, is there a general rule of thumb about how much a person should save?
I think it depends on how early you start. Like
generally
for someone starting out, I would certainly recommend 10%, including an employer match even. And of course, the later you wait, you may have to increase that percentage. But that's where the numbers that Ray's been talking about, the numbers of how much to save versus what the lifestyle is, that's what we're very good at helping people figure out.
Well, the lifestyle becomes everything.
It does.
And the rules of thumb concern me, because one of the rules of thumb people have is, well, I won't be spending as much in retirement. And that's just not true. I mean,
I was just about to ask you that.
My clients, when they retire, it's not 80% of their pre-retirement, it's 120%.
Seriously?
Seriously, because what can you do less of when you're working? Is spend money. When you're not working, you're traveling, you're spending at least 120% of your pre-retirement.
Is everyone seeing that from clients, the fact that they're not spending less or spending more?
No, I got a call from a client just last week, and this is, and I don't know how to solve this. Maybe with this panel we can solve their problem. But their retirement budget was $600,000 a year. Their minimum, that's what they had to have to retire on, $600,000 a year. And he said, just sold the business. We're going to net $10 million out of it, and all we want to do is just live off of the income, and we want it to be guaranteed as well. And we want to be able to leave $10 million to the kids when it's all over with. And I said, we're going to have a long talk about this, because these numbers don't get, we can take some risk and maybe get there. But if you want to talk about guaranteed, but all I'm saying is here's a couple that did well for themselves in business, but now they get to retiring, and those are expectations that are just unreasonable. I think anyone in this at this table would agree, especially when you associate the word guaranteed with it. And I think that what we see is a lot of people with unrealistic expectations out there, or the flip side of that, the people that just are retiring, and their plan is called the hope plan. They just hope it will be enough money. They hope it will work out, and they're willing to just ignore the facts and ignore the planning effort and take that risk and put that off till tomorrow. Sometimes called the mañana plan. But that's what I see a lot of. I'm sure everyone at this table sees that kind of situation.
Well, it's the planning process where you show them the trade-off, saying, yes, you can retire at this age, but this will be your standard of living. And they say, well, I can't live on that. I said, well, then this is the age at which you can retire. You get to make the decision. I mean, money is a wonderful servant, but it's a terrible master. And you've got to take responsibility for those choices.
And the industry has often called the retirement game a three-legged stool. It used to be a three-legged stool: pension, Social Security, and personal savings. They've added a fourth leg, or maybe a fifth leg, because you don't know how many legs that stool has, but it's working. It's continuing to work. It's getting a part-time job, which I think will be what a lot of people end up staring at, which is not a bad thing, because a lot of folks want to, they stop working, and then after a couple of years they realize that they need that contact, that the social contact. I think that's a viable option, and not necessarily the end of the world for someone who's not entirely prepared.
Are all of you seeing clients who are taking that kind of option, where they're?
I think it's a wonderful option as a lifestyle choice. I think it is not a good plan to count on that stream of income, because I think there are going to be a lot of people chasing after an increasingly few or number of those jobs.
Now let's talk about the nest egg. Okay, you've got a nest egg. At some point you're going to start making withdrawals. Is there a formula for making these withdrawals? I have read about the 4% rule before, so if you would explain it to me and then tell me if that's fact or fiction.
Well, that's based on a study done many, many years ago, and it's based on a lot of assumptions, such as a retirement span of at least 35 years or more. Also, interestingly, of course, it's not a guaranteed rate. It's a highly probable rate through good markets and bad markets through that time period. It also assumes from the original study that your stock or equity position is pretty high, probably higher than what a lot of retirees might be comfortable with, between 50 and 75%. And so you have to really go back to the details, and it also doesn't include fees to manage those investments as well. So a 4% net withdrawal is a pretty high bar.
Ultimately speaking, those rules of thumb, you can't associate the word guaranteed with them, which I think some people want to hear. And they ultimately serve give some people out there an out from, it's kind of a lazy way to go into retirement. Well, I heard about this 4% rule, let's just try that on. And, so Joe and Myrtle go off into retirement, instead of coming to us, I don't know that, I would never recommend a 4%. That just, the rule of thumb doesn't make sense to me. That's why they come to me when we put a plan together and let it dictate where we go from there. So the rules of thumb, I think, are really dangerous.
I think a strategy that a number of planners use are showing projections with Monte Carlo simulations, and that just says, okay, the markets really don't care when you retire. That, unfortunately, sadly, but that's just the way the world works. And if we say, we could have a very bad period right out of the gate, and that would not work out well. So we'll show them a projection and say, yes, you could do a 4% rule, but you also have a 50% probability of being old and broke.
Well, we talked about stocks, bonds, IRAs, 401ks, et cetera. What about Social Security? What role does that play in retirement planning?
A big role for most people, really.
Yeah, well, that's, for a lot of people we're seeing, that's their only guaranteed inflow of income. So, that is, from that standpoint, it's good. We don't have the pension plan necessarily, but most people we talk to at least have that. So we know that those funds are going to come in. And for the generation we're speaking of, I think the funds are pretty much there. There's a lot of negativity about, depending on who you talk to about Social Security. There's enough money there to fund, the retirement of most people we're talking to these days. But yeah, it's their guaranteed income, which is an important leg on that stool.
Yeah, it's guaranteed for life. I guess it's the only.
And it has a cost
the only
of
money
living
you can't outlive.
Cost of living associated with it as well, so it's going to increase over a long period of time.
Well,
so it's an important asset, and I think a lot of people brush over examining their Social Security options. I don't think most people understand what they are and how to take advantage. What's the strategy
that all of you recommend when it comes to Social Security?
Well, it depends. It depends on, let's say, it depends on their health. I have someone I was very close to, took retirement at 62, and I thought to myself as a planner, I go, God, that's probably not the best decision. Well, he passed away about a year and a half ago, and he was 72. It was absolutely the right decision for him. There's no right answer for any one individual. As a general rule, there's no right answer. It depends on
but most people
individual.
don't even look at what their options are.
No.
And they run, so they get to age 62, they take the money and run. That's what 78% of the world does with Social Security. Here, the check's available, so they take it. And at this stage in our lives, people that are facing retirement should be making retirement decisions such as Social Security and investments based on the context of their actual financial and retirement plan. So that's why everybody's a little bit different.
Let's talk about some of the expenses that we're going to have in retirement. And my first question is about debt. Credit cards, cars, houses, you name it. Do you all recommend going into retirement debt-free?
It depends, as always.
I knew you'd say something.
Consumer credit, car loans, things, that's financial cancer. You have to wait. You have to wait until you're done with those before you should retire. Mortgage debt can be a little more problematic depending upon the composition of your other assets. If you have a mortgage and all of your other wealth is qualified plan, you probably should really think twice about pulling out 135% of qualified plan money, paying the tax in advance just to be debt-free. Psychologically, it's a wonderful thing, but the mathematics may be different. So you've just got to run the numbers.
So if I have, credit card debt that I can't pay off in a short period of time, should I dip into savings to pay it off before I retire?
No, you need to keep working.
Thank you. Okay. Debt-free, everybody else agrees debt-free is the best way to go?
That would be the gold standard.
The gold standard.
That would be you could go in feeling pretty good. I mean, it might be impossible, and may not be practical, but it'd be great position.
But not the best idea to maybe buy a new house right before you
The challenge that most financial plans have are fixed costs. Fixed costs are what can sink you and make you make a bad choice at a wrong time. So if you minimize your fixed costs, and most of your costs are really discretionary, you can choose to take a vacation or not choose to take a vacation, you have enough flexibility to weather the things that we can't foresee.
Of course, the 10-ton gorilla are medical expenses, insurance.
I was just about to get to that. Let's talk about health care, because there was a study that was done by Fidelity Investments, and they estimated that a 65-year-old couple, or a couple turning 65 this year, would incur $260,000 in out-of-pocket health care expenses, and that doesn't include long-term care costs, $260,000. So it is one of the big unknowns, but are you seeing, what's your reaction from your clients when you start talking about health care expenses?
It's a budget item. It's just one you've got to plan.
Just another budget item.
It's a budget item you've just got to plan on. You just don't know when it's going to come. But we had talked earlier that the biggest risk are the really big problems of Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Those are the things that will blow up even the best crafted financial plan out there, and you've got to at least talk about those and what can be done to and recognize that they are a risk.
Well, some of those numbers from Fidelity also are aggregating the Part B and D and Medicare supplemental costs through one's expected retirement. So some of that is the premium cost, and there is quite a bit of relief that I see with clients when they do reach that magic age of 65. If you compare the healthcare premiums, if you're on the individual market, between 60 and 65 versus what they could potentially reduce to at age 65, there's a clear difference.
I think there's going to be an increasing awareness that our investing in our own health will reduce those budget items, and in some cases substantially. And if you will engage in regular exercise, get enough sleep at night, and diet and nutrition, your probability of Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's plummets. So there are choices that can be made, which are not portfolio choices, but are lifestyle choices. And those are every bit and maybe more important than how well your portfolio did last quarter.
Yeah. We've been talking about finances, but there is another component to retirement, and that's the mental and emotional side. And I know you all deal with money, but I'm sure you also counsel your clients as well when it comes to the mental and emotional side of things, because it's been said that retirement is an identity shift. It's a different stage of our lives. So what sort of adjustments do we need to make mentally and emotionally when we're heading into retirement?
Start early. You don't create a new identity overnight. You've got to really decide who you want to be, and it's going to be a different person. And what your marriage or your relationship is going to be like, because the joke of, we took each other for better, for worse, but not for lunch is very real. And those conversations need to be started many, many years in advance of even being financially ready for not retirement, but for independence.
Do you see clients that go through an identity crisis when they stop working? They lose that identity.
When your identity is all wrapped up in that particular job, physicians, certainly college professors is an example, it's very hard to lose that and not lose yourself. And you've got to really work on that many, many years in advance of being prepared financially for that change.
The biggest adjustment that has to be made either way is when one spouse dies. And, and that happens during retirement typically. And that's really where the biggest emotional and sometimes financial trauma starts to occur, is the death of a spouse, and depending on the circumstance. So that's, to me, a far greater challenge than just, I walked off my job one day and now I'm, I have to go, become find a hobby, is just dealing with and being prepared for death of a spouse.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's often the woman who is left, correct?
I've seen, we see it both ways.
But
statistically, she would be
Yeah,
in that position, sure.
All right, last question, big question. What is the key to being happy in retirement?
It takes three things. The first is enough money, and enough is the operative word because it's enough for your plan. And the second thing is your health, and we've talked about that earlier. The third is you got to have a reason to get up in the morning, and if you have that, you can deal with all the others.
Well, I'd like to wish all of you a happy retirement and also to thank you for being on The Best Times.
Thank you.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.